famous warrior, welcome back to our channel. I hope you guys are continuing to find this space your go-to place to come and get inspiration and encouragement to continue facing your battles in this thing we call life. Today I have an interesting topic which I am so excited to share with you guys. It's a continuation of our series of becoming mommy and daddy. But unlike the stories that we have shared in this series so far, this is a unique and completely different story that I hope you guys will not only get into, but it will open up your eyes to things maybe that you haven't thought about. Today I have longtime friends of mine, Meamui and Chikubabe Kaunda. I have known them for, how long?
I think 8 years.
Yeah, something like that. I've only known you guys in your married state. I think back in the day I knew of Chiku, but like we didn't have a relationship. I didn't know you like that. So I'm excited to hear this story like in detail. And I'm also excited to provide the opportunity for people to learn from your story. So welcome. Before we get started, I just want to state for the record, I am so excited that you're here. Thank you for agreeing to be here with me, to share your story, to be vulnerable. Chiku is like, did I really sign up for this? About that. So in true famous warrior fashion, just to kind of set the stage for what we're going to talk about, let the viewers get to know more about you guys, share a bit about yourself in 5 sentences only.
Individually?
Yes,
or?
individually.
Okay. Want to go first?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. Number 1, child of God, crazy about God and the things of God. Number 2, I'm a wife, mommy, daughter, sister, friend. I love all those roles. Number 3, it may sound boring, but I love things to do with finance, investments, development. 5 seconds.
Yes.
No, 5 sentences, not 5 seconds. So that was your 4th one, so you have one more to go.
One more. Okay. I love farming.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm her husband.
Okay.
I'm her husband. I'm a dad.
Yeah.
I'm the last born in my family.
Okay. So you know that.
Yeah. I like tech, I guess. I'm a tech junkie. And yeah. And I enjoy being a dad and a husband.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So take us all the way back to how you guys met. Because we're setting the stage, so I want to hear the whole story. How did you guys meet? And I guess you can summarize it in your own versions, because I know, like, yes, the story is the same, but then you have different vantage points. So how did you meet? And in that, I want to know where your relationship with God was at that point of you guys meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can go first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So we initially met in 2nd grade. You didn't know
No,
that?
I did not know that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
At school.
At school.
Okay.
Yeah, I had just moved schools. He was already at the school. So that's how I knew him. We were not friends.
Were you in the same class?
We were in the same class.
Okay.
Yeah. We didn't like each other at all. Yeah.
Okay.
As he said, he's the last born. So yeah, he had last born tendencies.
Wow.
Yeah, so we were in the same class up to 7th grade, and then we went our separate ways. We reconnected again in 10th grade, and we started phone conversations And then that's how we actually started dating, eh?
Wow,
The
so you guys
phone.
started dating in 10th grade.
In 10th grade, yeah. Leading into like so I went to boarding school. So then it was just letters. Now the funny thing is, we only met when I was in 11th grade, like.
So you were like pen pals, kind of.
Yes.
Who introduced you?
Like how did we reconnect?
Yeah. For you to form that reconnection to now start dating via the pen pal thing.
Yeah.
How did that come up?
So we had a mutual friend who used to live in my neighborhood and was still in touch with him. I don't even know if you remember this, but he's the one who gave me his number. I think he said, "Oh, remember Chiku?" I don't even remember exactly how that went, but he gave me his number, so I called. So
Nice
would
girl.
be no, because for me at that time I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember this guy. We used to be in the same class.
Yeah.
And we then said we would have conversations for hours on end. There was one which my dad intercepted
Wow.
because they had a receiver in their bedroom.
So he was listening in on purpose or on accident?
I think it was on accident.
Okay.
Yeah, it was by accident. Yeah, so that's how we reconnected, and then I went to boarding school. So it was letters kind of. He used to write the sweetest letters. Unfortunately, I don't know where they are. Do you have my letters?
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, he wrote the sweetest letters. Yeah, but then going into 12th grade, I had to concentrate on school because it was my exam year. So I wrote him a letter and I dumped him by letter. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh.
Still dealing with the trauma.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chiku, pick it up now and tell us, like, from the breakup, then how did you guys reconnect later to get to the path to where you are now?
I think we then reconnected. Should have been college. Yeah. So then I signed up to go to Zekas, and when I came through, I think we bumped into each other. Actually, or you told me, we got in touch. I can't remember whether she called or I called her, and she told me she was at Zikas, and I'd already signed up to come to Zikas. But I think that was kind of part of the motivator. Was that, yeah, and we reconnected. And I think when we got to Zikas, it was kind of like we picked up where we had left off.
Wow.
And but obviously that was college days. And
He was discovering himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
How old were you at the time?
I went to college when I was 18. When he came to join me, I was 19.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were babies still.
Yeah.
Yes. Extremely.
Okay. So at that point, were either of you saved? Where were you in your relationship with God at the time of you now college days? Now we are seriously dating outside of high school.
Far from it for me. For me, not at all. Actually, I mean the traditional go to church on Sunday, because we grew up with parents that, at least in our household, you go to church on Sunday.
Right.
Yeah. So they'll drag you to church, but I don't think my faith was really at that point. It wasn't solidified, so we were wild teens.
Yeah. Same for me, actually. My walk with God, and when he says wild teens, baby, you say I was a wild teen.
I will not associate.
For me, I wasn't into clubbing. So now here's this dynamic. I was very reserved, but at that time when we started dating and whatnot, for me, my heart was already settled that this is the guy
person.
I was going to end up with. Like, my heart was set. But unfortunately, my walk with God was very basic. Growing up, I also grew up in a house where we would go to church every Sunday, and for me, that's where it ended. I didn't really know I could have a deep personal relationship with God like I have now.
Yeah.
So it was still just basic church on Sunday. I hardly ever read my Bible like in my personal time. Never had any devotion. So my walk with God at that time was almost non-existent. Just as basic can be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So while you were in college, because you grew up going to church every Sunday when you were in your parents' home. Now you had this freedom. You're not in your parents' home anymore. So were you still going to church every Sunday because of the routine and the principle of it? Or were you like, okay, now I don't have to do this anymore, so I'm not doing it at all?
I think for me it was more the latter. I'll go to church if I was invited, but most of the time I'd probably be hungover on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So church wasn't really what was on my mind.
Priority.
It was. I mean, obviously my mom would try and call and push, but I think more than anybody, if there's a person that really pushed me to go to church every Sunday, was her. And even when she kind of picked that up, it was always, what are you doing on Sunday? So, I had completely lost my way.
Yeah. Okay. That's good for us to have kind of like the picture of where you guys were at the time of the beginning of this relationship that has now evolved into something completely different, completely amazing.
Yeah.
So okay. At which stage had you reached in your relationship when you discovered that you were pregnant? How many years had you been dating? Were you still in school or had you graduated? Kind of set the scene for us. Yeah.
No, I had graduated and I was working at that time. So our relationship was, I mean, you can imagine somebody who I had started dating at secondary school and through the different phases of our lives and whatnot. So we had quite a few breakups.
Okay, breakup situations.
Yes. And I remember the very last one we had was actually more or less like the final breakup, right?
Yeah, no, I think that was. We had pretty much broken up. I was dating someone else actually. Then we ended up working in the same building. We were both working.
You kept just being
bumping into each other.
Like
yeah.
Wow,
it was weird.
So we ended up working in the same building, and we kind of reconnected. Yeah, and then it was really, I think we were both very cautious about getting into anything serious, but also there was a lot of history there. I guess so that kind of drove us together.
How long were you broken up before you got back together? How long was like the final breakup before now the reconnection happened?
I think it was like 2 full years.
Yeah,
wow.
About 2 years.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was like 2 full years. So like when I fell pregnant, at that time now we had started kind of dating again, and we actually broached the marriage subject. Like it was like, okay, would you like to get married? But I don't know at that time whether were you serious?
What is serious?
Like were you? Yeah, so
when you
we started having those conversations.
The question.
I wish I had a lapel mic that I could throw away and walk away.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we were. Yes, I was. Actually, the last breakup we had, I had realized at the time that this is a person I wanted to be with, but then we had been through so much drama. I thought this probably won't work.
Right.
And when we broke up, I figured this is it, right? So even when we reconnected, it was like, maybe there's still hope for us to have something, but the past kept coming
Popping
back.
up.
Yeah, so I was thinking, is this the right decision? But we had that discussion about getting married. Also, I think she had won through our dating phase, she had kind of won my parents over. My parents loved her, and we were friends. I mean, as far as they were concerned.
Yeah.
But they loved her, so it was kind of. In fact, my family did.
Your whole
So
My entire family.
I just remembered something quite weird during our the final breakup.
Yeah.
The time we were actually working in the same building. His mom actually called me to make an appointment. Can I meet you for lunch?
Whoa.
I was like, okay. Now I was shocked because the mom is kind of strict, friendly, but so now before that, you find that maybe she would travel and she would come back with perfume. So she would pass through my workplace. Oh, I got you this. So for me, I was like, okay. So anyway, when we met for the lunch date that time, then I had totally just made up my mind. Okay, now it's time for us to go our separate ways.
Yeah.
So I met her for lunch, and we chatted. And actually, the time we were going for lunch, we even walked past where you used to work. Did you see us?
I had no idea.
Did you see us walk past?
No, I had no idea. In fact, if I had known,
Wow,
me and her would have had words.
Yeah. Right? Wow.
But I told you that.
You told
had a
me
lunch
you
date.
had the lunch afterwards.
Afterwards,
but,
yeah. And I had the weirdest conversation with her. She did most of the talking. And she just said, sometimes a woman has to be like a leopard. Yes!
What does that mean?
You have to fight for what you want.
Wow.
It's like she was talking in cryptic, she wasn't really coming out and saying, hey, woman.
Jack up. This is your
Jack
bag.
up. So we had quite an interesting lunch date.
Wow.
And I should remind her of that,
Yes.
actually. Yeah, I'll
Oh,
remind
yeah.
her of that. So after that is when now I think certain thoughts now started coming in my head, okay, maybe I started entertaining the fact that, again, that maybe him and I could actually have a future. But the interesting thing is, while we were apart, actually, although he dated, for me, I did not start another relationship because, fine, I had told myself it was over with him, but I understood that I wasn't yet in a space to date somebody else, formally date somebody else, because I was always worried that if he ever popped up again, I would leave that person for him
And
hurt that person, and I did not want to hurt anybody.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So now you're back together, but you're being very cautiously optimistic. Tell us about in what way did you pick up where you left off? Because those are the words you used, Chiku. Was it just in the familiarity of, we know each other? Or run us through how hot and heavy did the relationship kind of take off? Because then at the same time you're saying you are cautiously optimistic. So how are you balancing the two? And then, I guess then through that we can then understand how the pregnancy, at which point the pregnancy came about in this, because it just sounds like a mixed pot.
Yeah.
Cautious optimism, marriage talk, history, former drama. I want to understand where all these flavors are intersecting.
How the baby happened.
Yes. Well, we know how the baby happened, but I want to know how the baby happened.
I don't know. It was. I think it was largely physical. There's a lot of it that was physical. I think we had already been physical from college, right? And then we were not together for a while, so I guess there was that part, and then that led into that plus the emotions of dating. So there was that, which was exciting when you're young, obviously, and then there's the fear, obviously, of what you've been through. So it was like a mixed pot, but it was exciting, I guess. It was emotional, it was exciting. I was very cautious about it as well. I just gotten out of a relationship. In fact, I ended my relationship because we kind of reconnected. So I did exactly what she was afraid of doing, which is I ended up hurting somebody else. Yeah, and then it was like, okay, now we're back together, and we're very physical. Is this going somewhere? Right? She obviously brought up that topic, and we discussed it. We were like, I think let's not keep doing this. Maybe this is the time to kind of make it official, right?
Yeah.
And I remember one of her. That's the time we started going to Miracle Life. At least I started going to Miracle Life.
Yeah. So, and I think I actually should mention that in case there's a young college person out there. Like I mentioned, for us then, like God was just Sunday kind of thing. But thinking back now, like the relationship I have with God now, and I don't know if I can say the same for him. But I think back and I'm like, starting from college, I would have done so many things different. Like it's possible to have a relationship with no physical things happening, and it's actually best for that not to happen. Even before the pregnancy and whatnot, I think back and I'm like, we could have actually done things different. But of course, no regrets about the child. But yeah.
Actually, to be honest, a lot of the problems that we faced in our relationship were because of sex.
Yeah.
Because I think once you open up that door, it's a very difficult door to close.
Yeah.
Because then it's
so many emotions.
Yes, and then you break up. Then now it's sex with somebody else, and then it's just a whole pot. And I think that kind of led to a lot of complications.
Yeah.
And thinking back, that was one of our major difficulties in our relationship was that. So so then we started. You were attending Miracle Life. I don't know how you started going to that church.
I just wanted a fresh. It's like I think that's when, like I just started feeling this pull towards forming a deeper relationship with God. Not that I saw it with anybody else, like just this hunger started being stirred up, and how did I find myself at Miracle Life? I don't remember.
But was this before the pregnancy?
Before. Yeah.
I think didn't Maggie and Conda kind of push you towards that?
I actually think I initially started going there before they did.
Okay, anyway,
Yeah.
So then it turned into this whole, if we're gonna have a relationship and we do it right, then you have to start coming to church. So we started going to the same church.
Yeah. I actually asked you to pick which church, and then
yes,
he came, and I was praying that he was gonna like it, and thankfully he did. So he was like, "Okay, we can, we can settle here."
So but then obviously the physical part continued.
Talk to people about that. Share that. Kind of pull the curtain back to that situation, for lack of a better word, where you have this hunger, you want to grow closer to God, but because you've started patterns that are hard to break, because once you get physical with somebody, it's hard to stop. You know what I mean? You can have the conversation, this is sinful, we shouldn't be doing this, let's try and get on the right path. But it's already there, you know. So
it's like kind of like been normalized.
So kind of talk to us about that, where you want so badly for your relationship to be on this right path, and you know what the right path is, and it sounds like you are taking the steps to, okay, let's do this together, let's grow together, let's make this the foundation of our relationship. But in actual fact, you had already made something else the foundation of the relationship, which was kind of now competing, you know. I think it would be good for people to hear from you guys what that dynamic really looked like for you, what the internal struggle maybe was for you, if there was any.
I think the familiarity part of it is the most dangerous. And if you're going to make it work and say, okay, we're not going to be physical anymore, if you have started being physical, you have to take drastic steps. Kind of, I was watching your previous episode on the guy who used to take alcohol and whatnot.
Yeah.
So he told us that he had stopped hanging out with certain friends, and so in this particular case as well, if you're a young unmarried person, don't be in certain places with your partner where you know obviously this is going to lead to that. Like just take particular steps to make sure you're not alone together. Or if you are alone together, at least make it such that you will not find yourselves doing any physical stuff you're not supposed to be doing.
Don't play house.
Yes,
And
don't play house.
You kind of have that whole in a scenario that I don't know how common it is, but I had my own place. So once you have your own house, you have your partner coming over and etc. You kind of feel like, look, we're already talking about getting married, so we might as well, you know what I mean? But it's not. Yeah. It's not at all. So once you start playing house, it can complicate a lot of things, because then you justify it in your head. You're like, I mean, we're already going in this direction anyway. So
don't play house. Sums it up perfectly.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so how long did you play house before you found out that you were pregnant?
A year maybe? Yeah, about a year. And then it was it's weird. I don't know why it's always a shock.
Well, you know what?
You know what you've been doing.
How did this happen?
And especially to me, I was like, oh wait, what?
Yeah, I wasted a perfectly expensive dinner because of that.
Yes.
Oh,
so that was one of the
it.
So he took me for dinner, seafood. Was it my birthday?
I don't know, but it was some event. I can't remember what it was. And and then she threw up lobster.
Yes. Like, and to
lobster
me,
costs a lot of money.
Yes, it does.
It really does. Just for those guys out there. Just so you know.
I'm sorry.
Clearly, this is an unresolved issue.
Lobster costs a lot.
I threw it all up.
Wow.
And
they charge
it took
per
a while
for lobster. It's not like a standard price.
Oh my god.
It was a huge lobster. But could have kept it in.
So that was what led you to know, like, is that what made you know, like, you're pregnant?
No, I just thought I had an illness. Like, that's how naive I was, I guess. Like, come on, you're doing this.
Yeah.
But it just did not cross my mind that I could. So that happened, and then I was like, okay, I'm sick. And then the following week at work, I just had this craving for Hungarian sausage and chips. Yeah. So I actually made my workmate. I had recently started that job. I made my workmate. We went by bus I asked him, where can I get Hungarian?
That's how bad it was.
And chips. Yes. So we went all the way. So I was working in Mungwi Road, and we went all the way, like near Buseko. It's like, that's where you'll find Hungarian chips. Bought, came back, I ate it, I threw it up as well. And then the following day, I was craving this sour drink. And then a workmate of mine, he used to sit opposite me.
And it was a guy even.
It was a guy. Yeah, he just came to my desk and said, you ordered a mean baby. I was like, no.
Get behind me, Satan! How dare you!
So I think my workmates had noticed this weird behavior. This one. So, but then I was like, okay, I'm ill. So I went to the hospital. I remember being in the room with the doctor, and he said, we're going to do 2 tests. We're going to do malaria, and we're going to do a pregnancy test. And then I told him, I think I have malaria.
It must be.
It must be.
Must be malaria.
I was like, I don't know why you're doing the pregnancy test.
Wow.
It's malaria.
Wow.
So we did the tests. Malaria came out negative. And the weird thing is, the guy who then did the pregnancy test, instead of taking the results back to the doctor and the doctor giving me the results, no, just there and then he says, "Oh, you're pregnant." I was like,
Yeah.
me? What? Yeah. So the following day is when I told him. I said, "Dude, I need to." No, was it the same day? I think it was the same day. He was actually at his friend's house. I even remember we were standing outside. There was even a clothesline. Yes, do you remember?
No.
Yes.
No.
We were standing next to a
He's still on the
clothesline.
lobster. And yeah.
So I broke the news to him. Now, the interesting thing in all this is, for me, I had already resolved that I was going to keep this child.
Because you had time to process.
I had time to process, and it was just when I just found out, I didn't even think, oh gosh, I'm unmarried, I have to terminate. It did not cross my mind at all. And I'm a thinker. I process things a lot.
Yeah.
So, and I plan. So in my head, I had even said, okay, him, even if he says, no, me, I don't want the child and whatnot, I was like, no, I'll keep this child.
Yeah.
Even if I'm going to raise this child alone, I'll do that. So then, even as I was telling him, it wasn't with a thought of, I'm
What
telling
should
this
we
man
do?
that I'm pregnant, so let's quickly get married and whatnot. So no. Yeah.
Okay. Chiku, I'm watching all your facial expressions, and I'm still stuck on the lobster. So, run us through the feelings, the thoughts, everything that was happening in your mind when she broke this news to you.
So I don't even remember where we were, but I do remember the conversation. For me, the first worry was obviously her dad is very strict, right?
Extremely.
And she lived with her parents
Okay.
at the time. I lived on my own. So I figured, this then kind of complicates things. Already, I never used to talk to her parents. I don't know if I'd ever spoken to your mom at the time. Maybe. I'm not sure.
But you had encountered my dad at some
Yes.
point when you were dropping me off.
Yes.
At home.
Yes.
Yeah.
We exchanged looks.
Okay.
We exchanged looks. It didn't help that I was driving a nice car at the time.
Snap.
So he probably thought I was a much older dude or something. I don't know.
No, actually, he knew you because there were times he would come and pick me up from college and would be seated by the steps outside the lecture theater.
So he knew your face.
So he would be in the car park outside and he had like a direct gaze of.
Yeah, he never
So
smiled.
he,
chap.
yeah,
He never
so
smiled
he knew
much.
you.
He never smiled much. Actually, he never
At
smiled at all. So the dad is huge. Like he's tall. He's like this really, So then that was my first thought. Was, oh my god. Then obviously the second thought was, is this what I want? I'm young. It's a child. You know what I mean? It's a whole child. It's then, and the thought sometimes, and this did happen. It goes to, is there options? What are the alternatives? And I think because it's in your head, you hear stories of people who go and have pregnancies terminated. So so things like that are like maybe this happens to a lot of people, and this is what they do.
Yeah.
So, so I remember I was calm. I was calm about it, and I said, should we consider that? Then I remember her answer was, think about it. Let's talk about this tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, let's, we've this is where we're at. Can we discuss this tomorrow? Right? Let's sleep over it. In fact, I think that was the term you used, is let's sleep over it. And so I didn't sleep much. And I remember making a few calls. I actually made calls. And weirdly enough, I knew people. And that's the thing about Lusaka. I actually knew people that I'd heard talk about it. Like, there's ways to have this sorted out. So I called somebody who said, so I know there's a clinic. And I remember the lady I called, right, was an associate.
He was busy. Your friend was not sleeping.
the lady I called was an associate who owned a pharmacy. So then she says, okay, yeah, so there is ways. How many weeks is it and things like that. Then she said, this is a lady she was unmarried at the time. I know she had a couple of kids. And then she says, are you sure you want to do that? And I was like, no, I'm not, but I'm trying to explore my options. She says, no, you've got a job, you've got a house. What are you worried about? I mean, how much responsibility can it be, right? And weirdly, I've never told her that. That's what really got me thinking. Like, but what's the fear?
Yeah.
What's the worst thing that could happen? And then by morning, and I remember this. I wasn't a very prayerful person, but I prayed about it.
Wow.
And I think I was asking God, what's the direction? What am I going to do now? And I remember in the morning when I woke up, I was excited about having a baby. It just switched. It was like I was a completely different person. And then, did you call me or I called you?
You asked me to come over.
Yes, I asked you.
Yeah.
I asked you to
Did
come
you cook?
over. Yes, I'd cooked.
You
It wasn't
like the stuffed tomato.
Yes, but it
Yeah.
wasn't lobster
Yes.
though.
We forgot about the lobster.
I still had it in the back of my mind, but
Yeah.
So I cooked and I was trying. So yeah, so we I can't remember if we even got to eat first, and we said let's talk about. Then you said I have something to tell you, and I said I also have something to tell you. Then you said can we consider raising this child? And I was like, that's exactly what I was thinking, and we really agreed. We were on the same page.
Yep.
The next topic was how do we tell the parents, and when do we tell the folks? Yeah. So now the decision was made.
Yeah.
Weirdly, the marriage thing didn't come up. Like
No.
we didn't even
Going to
discuss
be my
it.
next
Yeah.
question.
Like no, we didn't.
Yeah.
We didn't discuss it, and I think she was very categorical about that. She said, "This is nothing to do with marriage.
Yeah.
Let's separate the two."
Yeah, and and for me and for him as well. Okay, I don't know for him, but for me, the biggest reason I did not want to connect the pregnancy to marriage is because I've heard so many cases of children who grow up in unhappy homes. Where the parents got married because of a pregnancy, and they end up feeling responsible that the parents are unhappy because of them. Yes. So I did not ever want the child to ever feel that sort of responsibility. So it was important to me that when we decide to get married, it's because we want to be married and totally not because of the child.
Yeah. So it was a bit of a... It was relief, actually, that we were on the same page.
Okay, so let's talk about the relatives, the family, okay? Because the two of you're on the same page, but then now there's two completely separate families that now have to process this information that you've had the opportunity to process, okay? And in our culture here in Zambia, there is the whole conversation of, no, quickly let's do the shotgun wedding before the pregnancy is showing, so that at least the baby is legitimized, or whatever they think. And then there's also the whole thing of, no, you need to pay damages. So like that's the society in which we live, right? So there's cultural pressures, there's societal pressures, there's family pressures. How did you guys now navigate these next steps? Did you have to have conversations separately with your people? What happened? Like, run us through what happened from both families, and then what remedial, for lack of a better term, what remedial action was prescribed by the elders in your family that you were still submitted to?
I just gotta put it out there that the damage just trumps the lobster.
First of all, I wanted a discount of the lobster from the damage.
Oh my gosh!
So we've passed the lobster.
And bring back those.
Oh my gosh! We are triggering Chiku now here, guys. Oh my goodness. Mea, let's start with you because he will have to get into now the whole conversation about the damages, and I want to hear how you felt. As you answer the question, I want you also to talk about the feelings that you were experiencing as the big people are telling you this is what you must do.
I go first. Okay. So for me, we've already stated that my father was extremely strict. But of course it goes without saying that I had to tell my parents because I was under their roof. So the first person I actually told was my young sister, and then my young brother, and then my mom, who took it surprisingly well. She didn't scream, she didn't blow her top. She just said, oh, okay, it's happened. My mom's stance has always been like, I've heard her say this over the years, that it doesn't make sense when your child falls pregnant out of wedlock, where you throw a tantrum, you say all manner of things. It won't change anything, and you can't take those words back. So she took it pretty well, and then she broke the news to my dad. So she managed the situation pretty well, because even when she broke the news to my dad, she told him, you are not going to
be extra about this.
You're not going to be extra about this. It's happened. So let's handle this situation the best way we can. And so my dad was also pretty, I don't know what term to use, mild about it. But then he also said something very interesting. He wanted to put it out there that they were not going to throw me out and make me get married to the father of the child. He simply said, I want you to know something. If his family, or if he feels like they don't want the child, you can give the child my name.
Wow.
That shocked me.
Wow.
Yeah, you can give the child my name, and we'll raise this child with you.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Just got chills.
Did I tell you? Yeah. So, which then even solidified the no pressure to get married bit of it. Yeah. So that was us. So during,
just hold that thought. I don't want us to quickly gloss over that, because that is huge.
very huge.
How did that make you feel in the moment? Because you have all these fears, you have the hormones raging in your body, you're emotional, you're scared, you're all these things, you're not ready for this, it hasn't gone the way you planned, and all the things.
Yeah.
And then your dad, who you were most afraid of his reaction, most afraid of his disappointment, and all the things that he could have done, and then he tells you that.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel in your position as his daughter?
It really humbled me. It really humbled me, and I realized, oh wow, my parents are amazing people.
They love me.
And not every parent reacts like that. So for me, it really humbled me. And even as I was under their roof, as the pregnancy developed, we actually started experiencing it as a family, because then we were all under the same roof, including my siblings.
Right.
So now
You're the eldest?
no, I'm the second eldest. So which then also offers a different dynamic of becoming mommy and daddy before you get married. You know, a married couple will experience these first moments of pregnancy together and whatnot. For me, I experienced them with my siblings. And
the baby cakes, you know.
So you see, even my parents being settled in that right from the beginning. I remember when I went for my first ultrasound, I was so excited, and you know, they gave me a little picture. And I remember getting home and showing Dad, this is a picture of a baby. And for me, I actually didn't consider that, oh, this is somebody who's, set in his traditional ways and whatnot. And he was like, no, but I'm not supposed to see it.
Oh.
So then I was like, oh, okay. To him, he's like, okay, this child is in my child's womb. Why should I be looking at this picture kind of situation? But anyway, so that was the whole environment in the house. Like, everybody in the house now started looking forward to the baby because there was none of that hostility.
Yeah.
So we all freely shared in it, and I was very open about my experiences with my siblings and everybody. So everyone had some
Everyone was expecting.
Everybody in the house was expecting the baby.
So
Yeah.
Chiku, tell us about how you spoke to how you broke the news to your family, but then also talk about how did you feel being left out? Did you feel left out of some of the things that she was experiencing with her family because you guys were not married and you were not living together? How did you navigate that situation?
Okay, so so I told I think I told my siblings first because we were close. They were very, in fact, if anything, I think they were both kind of excited about it. They're like, it's deal with it.
Yeah.
You need to tell the folks. So I remember calling my parents and they drove into town. My dad was really cool. We got along quite a lot. He liked conversations. He liked conversations over coffee. So he said, let's meet up. And he was with mom. So we had a meal. We had coffee, actually. We didn't discuss that until we got back to the car park. So I was like, so I have something to tell you, right? So I told them. I said, this is what has happened. And I remember mom was trying to hide a smile on her face.
Your mom.
She had like this kind of smile, which she was trying to hide. And
your mom was background matchmaker, and she was secretly like, yes.
So dad kind of, he asked a few questions about,
Do you remember the questions he asked?
It was mostly, do you understand the procedures behind this? Has she told her parents? There will have to be, there was nothing. He was really calm about it. It was more of a, we'll get back to you. We need to talk to your uncles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he says, but it's happened. Don't worry about it. So I remember telling her that I had that conversation. Then she told me about the conversation she had with her dad, and I didn't know how to feel.
Yeah.
I was almost offended.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, so does he think I would, Then it became like, is this going to become an issue? Kind of like, this is my child, So
I'm in the picture.
I know, right? So why is the issue of surnames even coming up? It's just definitely going to have my name. So we were both happy, I think, that we had that conversation. It set we started out well, until
folks got involved.
until she called me and said we should go see her grandmother. And,
that's when the pressure started.
I guess you know what
Get
that
married
means.
before the pregnancy starts showing, kind of.
So we had that. I said I didn't want to. Remember, I said that I don't think that's a necessary meeting. And did we go see how she called?
No, we didn't. But
she called. She called and then talked about how we should, And I said, that's. I didn't want to be rude, so I understood where she was coming from, and I'll be honest, I absolutely understood where she was coming from, right?
too.
And in my head I was thinking, okay, but we discussed this, before this even happened. So why is this a bad idea? You know? So I remember then bringing it up I was chatting to my mom and I brought it up, and I remember something she said to me, which she kept repeating throughout. She said, marriage is the most selfish decision you should ever make. Never make a decision for marriage for anybody else. It should be yours, because you have to live with that decision for the rest of your life.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then she said, calm down, let's deal with this first, then we can discuss that later. So yeah, I think I told you that, but I didn't, at the same time I wanted to say it in a way that wasn't offensive to her grandmother, yeah, so because I didn't know whether the pressure was coming from her grandmother or her mom, so I didn't want to come out as this guy who you've already, as we call it, damaged. and then you don't want to discuss marriage, which I remember became a sore spot during the damage talks.
Yeah, like if you say you are going to get married, so why not just combine everything now? So now standing our ground in that situation, because now other relatives were involved.
Yeah.
So in a small circle, it's easier to
manage.
understand why that decision is being made, but in the larger circle, it then became stressful.
Yeah. So then my mom's older sister, and my uncles were the delegation that went to the damage talks.
Before you explain how the conversation regarding the damages happened, explain in your own words, what is damages? Like when you pay damage, because there are people that might not know. There are people who might be watching from out of the country, or maybe they are Zambian, but it's never come up. So just to give people an understanding as you are now unpacking how these conversations happen, just explain quickly in your own words what that is.
Yeah, so it's I don't want to call it a penalty, but basically you have done things the wrong way. Okay, so you have broken tradition in the way you're supposed to go about having a child.
Okay.
So for that reason, your family is penalized for that. So yeah, so that's what we were. So talks had to be held. My family would approach hers and say, this is what has happened, and would like to sit down and discuss how we'll go forward. And then that's what moved into the damage talks, which didn't go very well at all, actually. They couldn't get along. They couldn't agree. The two families. Because initially her family then brought up the issue of marriage. They said, so why aren't we just discussing both issues? And my side of the family said, no, let's separate the two.
So they wanted to have conversations about the damage and the bride price.
Yes.
Okay.
At the same time.
Okay.
And sort of my family said, that's not the direction we're going. Respectfully, would like to separate the two issues. So then because of that, her uncles then set the price really high, and it seemed like it was a deliberate move. Then so then my side of the family broke off the talks and walked off. And so then I remember my dad getting upset with us. He said, "Hey, you're the ones who wronged them, so why are you even discussing it?" So then of course my aunt had other thoughts. So they eventually came back to the table, and if I'm not mistaken, her dad had a talk with them about that as well, and then the price was kind of reduced to something that was more, it was still high for a single guy at the time, but it was manageable. My dad said, look, don't waste time, just pay. Right. So that was done. But we had a lot of back and forth between me and her, and this is the truth. It's because
Yeah.
it's always you don't
Drilled
understand
down.
my side of the family, and then she's also got her, so you kind of forget the two of you, and the discussion starts becoming about
Yes.
of the larger family. So we did have quite a few misunderstandings over that.
Tell us a bit about what you were feeling. So they pegged this price really high. You feel supported by your aunt and your uncles, but then you go back to your dad and your dad is like, bruh, why are you even complaining? Just pay this thing. How did you feel about that? Did you feel that this process was necessary? And then secondly, when you made peace that, okay, this is a process we must go through, then there's all these prices and all that stuff. How did you navigate what you were feeling about the situation?
It was kind of frustrating. It was kind of frustrating. And it also kind of felt like a rejection from her side of the family. I felt like maybe this was them saying, we don't want you, right? And I remember, I think we even had an argument where I said, look, if this doesn't work out, and we have to co-parent, we're going to have an issue. Because for me, I'm not going to live apart from my child. So we kind of had that conversation. But I think it took a lot of effort to realize that this wasn't about the two of us. And it was more about the process that had to happen. And that, I remember my dad telling me over a conversation, saying, you have to humble yourself. You're the ones who are going to that family with something that you've done wrong. So you can't go there with expectations of how you want things to go.
So after this whole process now was done, everything has been paid, things have been settled. Walk us through how you got from that point to then having the baby, TK is born, to now, we're now talking about marriage. Because the both of you were very settled in your hearts with the support of your parents that these were two separate issues that were not going to mix together. Okay? So then once the child was born, paint the picture for us about the birth. How involved were you, Chiku? And then you've just said, I'm not going to live apart from my child. So then what was the living situation after the child was born? And then now through that, walk us through how you came to the agreement of, okay, now we are at a point where we want to now
Get married.
Yes.
Yeah.
So during the whole pregnancy, he was extremely involved. We actually went to all the antenatal visits together. And leading to the birth, he was at the hospital with my mom, my sister, and two of my friends.
Petrus,
And Jimmy. So he was extremely, extremely involved. When the child was born, he was there to hold the baby. And I think then that's when he discovered just how involved my family was. But the good thing is, although my parents ended up starting to treat this child like it was their youngest child, they still respected him as the father. And so now he was free to come in the house. He would come over almost every lunch hour to come and see her. We actually have a lot of pictures of them doing their cuddles and whatnot during his work lunch. So he was involved from the get-go. And leading to the marriage, our wedding, I think after what we experienced during the damages thing, Lobola negotiations were they slightly better?
Yeah, the Lobola negotiations were definitely better.
Did you have PTSD?
The price was too high though.
But did you find that when it was time to have those conversations, you had a little bit of residual PTSD from the first time?
Absolutely. And this time, my dad insisted on being outside with me when they're having the negotiations.
To give that more support.
Yeah, also because my dad was the referee. So even when they came out with the first amount, he said the same thing. He said pay. right? And I remember going into this whole, but I have to start thinking about the wedding or whatever. He says, yeah, but that's why you're a grown man, so pay. You're gonna pay. And I remember he actually said, what I'm gonna do is I'll pay and you owe me money.
Wow.
And I'm gonna charge you interest on it.
Wow.
But he said you have to pay.
Wow.
So yeah, it was but it was better because then now I think there was a little bit of excitement, and the excitement was more of having to live with because I missed out on a lot.
Yeah.
I would hear these stories about kid waking up at night and etc., and I didn't get to experience that. And I only saw her when she was awake, and the weekends is when you had to spend the most time with her. And yeah, so for me it was kind of exciting, the idea of having to have her in my home, and she's a character. So yeah.
So sometimes would actually visit so he could experience certain things with her. Like at times would go over and I would carry her.
Yeah, and sometimes she'd drop her off and pick her up later.
Sometimes he would come home to pick her up.
Yeah.
My mother would struggle to release her, but
for good reason. I remember once I was home.
there was a time I wasn't home and he went to pick her up and she called me. He's come to get her. I think the very first time he picked her, should I? From like, that's
You
the
didn't
father.
tell me anything. Like, oh, we know you can take the baby and then cross the
Never
border.
come back.
I actually dropped her that day.
Yeah.
Hey dude, I was learning parenting. But we got to understand each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it was exciting. And it was also exciting because it was a completely different conversation. It wasn't a follow-up. It wasn't we now have a baby, are we getting married? That wasn't the discussion. The discussion was, we now have a baby. This is where we're at. Right? Where do you see your life going? And I think that's a question she actually asked. Is where do you see this going? Right? Also, I think it changed us. I realized she became a completely different person when the baby was in the picture. I think we both became completely different people. So even the discussion was completely different.
Yeah.
So it was like we're starting from scratch. And this for me, I think, is very vital for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You have to separate the two things. You're better off having a child in a happy marriage than getting married and then trying to figure out the marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
After you get married.
Yeah.
So
Before I get to, I want you to quickly share about how the church received you when you made the decision, or your intentions known to them, because there's the family element, but then there's also the church, your church life, your church family, their requirements and all that stuff. So I want you to talk a bit about that, how your steps went for that. But before we get to that, I want to ask how was your relationship regarding the sexual aspect during that time, during the pregnancy and after the pregnancy, before you got married? Were there any changes in the decisions that you made? How did you navigate? Okay, we're not yet married still. Yes, there was this familiarity that we discussed earlier, and now there's a baby. I think with the baby, isn't playing house even more easier now? Or like, how did you navigate that? Yeah.
I think that was gradual. We especially towards the marriage is when we just said, you know what, let's just completely cut this out. We even stopped kissing by last time.
well, like I said, there was a lot of change. There was a lot of change in both of us. But I also remember, it actually ties into your next question. We had a conversation when we decided to get married with the church and
Yeah.
and he was very I think he was shocked
We were open,
that we were that
completely
honest
open,
and that open
from the start.
And he says, you
Yeah.
know, so the one thing he did put up there, says, look, God is gracious.
Yeah.
You've this is where you've reached, and there's redemption.
Yeah.
And so you have to reset. You now have to do things the right way. So from now on, you have to do things the right way. And we had made that decision, and I mean it wasn't easy,
Yeah.
but I think we were looking at the bigger picture, and also the excitement of getting married and having a home, I think kind of we're like, it's worth the wait. Yeah, so we had to at that point stop playing house. And we did.
May you please share some practical things that you did for someone out there, a couple out there that's where you were, and they're trying to figure out how we're going to get over this hump of the familiarity and the playing house. Like, what are some practical do this, don't do these things that you can share?
Have the baby around, that's number one.
Yes, I don't know how some people are able to manage, but no.
If you have when you have a needy baby around, you won't have time. Also just keep busy. Concentrate on other things. It's a tough decision to make, but I think then regularly started attending church together. Would never miss a Sunday. And when we were together, we had the baby around most of the time, and most of the time we were planning. Whether planning a wedding, we're planning our lives together, or planning businesses. So it became much easier to do that. I think our focus completely changed. We spend most of our time parenting than concentrating. It has its downside as well. Is you spend less time concentrating on each other. And it all became, the focus became the child.
Baby. Yeah, but he told me one thing before we got married. He said, guys, when you move into this house, because she had her own cot, but she never slept in it. So my target was to breastfeed until she was 2 years old. We got married when she was 1 year and 11 months. And he said, guys, when you move into this house, she is not sleeping with us in the bedroom.
Who told you that?
Him.
Okay.
Yes. So then I had to make sure she was weaned before we got married. And when we moved in, she had her own room. So it was painful. But that's the time she started sleeping apart from me. Yeah.
To close off, I want to first say thank you so much for being so open, for your vulnerability. I've always known that about you guys anyways. You've always just been, what you see is what you get kind of people. And I appreciate you bringing that even to this conversation for the Famous Warrior audience. So thank you so much for that. But what final words would you have to say to somebody, whether they're in their teens, they're in their early 20s, they've gotten into this relationship and it got hot and heavy and sexual very quickly, and they find themselves in this situation where they're expecting a child, and they have to navigate all the things that you guys have talked about, and maybe they don't have supportive parents like you did, or maybe they do, but this isn't what they want for their story. What would you have to say to those people that may be watching or that may get to watch this video down the line? Some words of encouragement, so to say.
Yeah, there's grace. There's always grace. We're always learning. We make a lot of mistakes, and the important thing is to remember that we can always run back to him and correct it. And it's never too late. And it's something that I believe more and more every day is how God has a plan for us, and a plan for good things. And it's getting back to the manual which he created us to follow, that will push you on the right path, that we throw away, because that's what it usually is you've thrown the manual away. So pick it up and get back to it.
Awesome. Okay, Famous Warriors, I'm sure that episode has been packed with so many things that you can take away, if not for you personally, then for somebody who you know. If you're a parent, there's so many things in there for parents. If you are a sibling, there's so many things in there for siblings, friends. Like, this video applies to everybody. I think that it's a conversation that needs to be had more openly. Like these guys have shared, their openness and their vulnerability is what got them to get the help that they needed. So I pray that this video has encouraged you, inspired you, got you thinking. If anything, let it be a conversation starter. And don't forget that our chance to fight is a privilege. Even in this journey of becoming mommy and daddy, however we get there, our chance to fight is a privilege, and you are definitely worth the fight.